this is Stephanie from Starkeeper Astrology. Today we're talking about the dreaded Mercury Retrograde. It happens 3 times a year, every year, and this first round starts February 17th and ends March 10th. So Mercury Retrograde gets kind of a bad rap. It is one of the more difficult, if not the only difficult retrograde that occurs through the planets. It's because it deals a lot with our day-to-day experiences, like travel, communication, technology, how we think. So it's dealing with a lot of our day-to-day actions. So it can be pretty challenging, but it doesn't mean that it's just here to be a nuisance. There's some wisdom in Mercury retrograde, which we will get to, but first we are going to talk about the inconvenient part about Mercury retrograde. So when dealing with travel, expect delays. Now, this doesn't mean that every single day during Mercury retrograde is going to be a bad travel day, but it does mean be prepared for it just in case, because one thing that it does seem to do is show up when we are the least prepared. So as long as you try to get up on time and give yourself enough time to get to whether it's your job or just a destination for the day, allot yourself maybe 15 extra minutes. I mean, it doesn't have to be crazy, but allot yourself a little extra time this way. If you are sitting in traffic, you can enjoy the song that's playing rather than raging at the person in front of you for hitting the brakes. It also does affect air travel, so really any travel. So expect delays at airports. Give yourself more time to get wherever you're going, regardless of your method of travel, is the best advice. Just give yourself more time. And try to make yourself as comfortable or make the journey as easy as possible. When it comes to technology, be prepared for glitches. It's going to malfunction. Doesn't mean every day. It doesn't mean this is going to be a constant, but it's a more likely chance of technological failure of some form, whether that's your GPS or your computer at work or your phone with the service or like a microphone camera setup. Regardless of what it is, understand that it's going to be a little glitchy. So if it comes to work and something that's really important that you're working on, I always suggest just save as you go. Like, save more often than normal. Write a little note, stick it somewhere, save work, and just as often as you can. With your phone, maybe give it a little rest period. Turn it off in between more than you typically do. I know for me, I rarely turn off my phone just like a couple seconds at a time to reset it. So if you're able to give it a break throughout the day, if you realize you're not using it, try to turn it off and give it some rest to try to avoid some glitches. When it comes to GPS, maybe if you have more than one, put them both on. I know my car sometimes has issues more than my phone does, so I'll run both because the car will suddenly just lose me. And it's like, oh, that's convenient. So I try to run with two anyway. So if you really don't know where you're going, maybe have two forms or print out some directions just in case, so that we can go to the old school method of reading the maps. That'll help you get there. The most, well, in my preference, the most difficult part about the Mercury retrograde is when it affects communication. So that affects so much, whether we're talking to coworkers or partners or just family and friends. Miscommunications are bound to arise. That's just what goes on during this time. So try not to take things personally, and try not to solve everything at this time, because it's just going to be a little more difficult. Instead, take this time to kind of observe. When it comes to work, maybe double check that the message or email or something you've communicated to a coworker really got through and they understand what you're saying, so that you can expect that and not, so you don't expect that they just understood and then it never shows up on time. So just do the double checking. When it comes to partners, if there's an argument, try not to take it personal, and try not to just solve it there. Just agree to disagree if you can, and observe, and take a moment to breathe, because even the smallest things can be misunderstood at this time. Mercury does rule the mind, so even with our mental body slowed down, the communication is definitely not going to be clear. So they might not be communicating exactly what they want or what they expect, and therefore fights are bound to happen. So try not to engage in that. Just take a break and visit it at a later time, preferably after March 10th. You'll notice that you might feel more irritable, more tired. Like I said, that's due to the mental faculties kind of... I mean, Mercury's not really going backwards, it's just our perceived notion of it. But with everything referring to it like that, the mind is working at a much slower rate. So the high stress of a day can feel a lot more overwhelming. So it can feel heavier, therefore you are more tired or you are more irritable, and understand that. So try to do things that make you feel a little better. If you're able to wear headphones at work, maybe put on some solfeggio frequencies. Those are really helpful. Or if you like a certain podcast, maybe put that on. They're just something really calming. Nothing that you want to sleep to, but that's if you're irritable. And if you're tired, maybe bring some juice. Orange juice is always a nice way to kind of pick yourself up with some natural sugars, or bring some fruit, something to kind of wake up the body if the mind doesn't always want to follow. With that brain fog, you might feel like you're not as sharp or not as quick, and that's okay. With the mind being slowed down, don't try to rush, because when you rush and you go against what the body is actually trying to do and process, you're bound to make more mistakes, rather than if you just took your time and honored the fact that you're a little slower, a little foggier, that you might still put out some decent work, or be a little clearer. I guess the general advice for this would be, go with the flow and don't try to control it so much, because things are going to be bound to be out of control. They're not working to optimal capacity. So the less tight you hold on, actually, the better the flow begins. And speaking of flow, the Mercury Retrograde is occurring in the sign of Pisces. Pisces is the two fish, the ebb and flow of life. So definitely going with the flow and being less resistant and putting things in such a strict box. Give the time for that movement and for things to not go as you expect. Pisces rules our dream state. So vivid dreams are probably more heightened at this time, and that could even mean nightmares. So if you're noticing you're having some nightmares, that could just be your subconscious trying to communicate some form of stressors at this time. With the mental body in reset mode, you'll notice intuition will be heightened, so it's a good time to take advantage of your creativity, as Pisces is a very creative sign. You'll notice that your mind will naturally be trying to shut down, so go with your gut more, go with your instincts, go with that side of you that isn't working so much up here with the logic, and dealing more with the intuition and how you feel. Retrograde starts with RE, so there's a lot of RE type themes. So retrograde's like a time where we reanalyze, we go back and we relearn some lessons, we reset, we redo, and we relax. So think retrograde, RE, lots of re's. So we revisit our past, so you might notice some situations coming up that you think you have dealt with already, that maybe you've missed some lessons in, or maybe missed a message. So that might start to show up, and kind of have this new way to look at it, where maybe your mind is not so analytical, but now you're able to feel out that scenario, because with the mind at rest and not processing at high capacity, it doesn't take over, and we have more space to look at things from this intuitive point of view, and reanalyze what we're going through in that scenario. So new perspectives, which always lead to ends of cycles. So also with it being in the sign of Pisces, that ends. It's the last sign of the zodiac. It's number 12. Astrologically, on the body, it rules the feet, so it's the bottom right before we birth in Aries. So revisiting these scenarios and situations, or even relationships, whichever it is, we go back and we look at it and we can clear away what no longer suits us, or things that we realize that no longer resonate and feed us, you know, the energy that we're looking to move forward. So this is a good time to, you know, journal, I would say, because you don't want to really make any deciding judgments or deciding actions when it's in retrograde. It's really an observation time, like reanalyze scenarios. So if you are able to journal your day-to-day or cycles that you notice are being brought up, something from your past that just came forward, write these things down and revisit them after the retrograde and see if you have a new perspective on whatever came up. Maybe you can integrate parts of that. Maybe you dismissed all of it and you realized that was too hasty, or you kept too much and you realized, you know what, this no longer serves me, I can let that baggage go. Whichever direction it goes in, there's no judgment there. Everyone's scenarios are different, but this is definitely about observing, letting the mind sit and quiet down. This way we can awaken the intuition, slow down, and say, oh, here's some lessons that I missed. So although Mercury retrograde, we can't slow down too much in our day-to-day work tasks, and that's where the challenging aspects come from, it still has some very deep and spiritual work that is done. So by the end of the day, of a long day, of having to use that mental body, make sure you give yourself time to rest and be creative. A foot bath would be nice, enhancing that Pisces energy of the feet and water, and then also the meditation to relax that mind, and then this way you can process what you were going through. Or any other form of self-care and creativity that you can indulge yourself in. So buckle up, the challenges are here. It's nothing that we can't get through, and I would love to read about any of your experiences during this retrograde. If you notice some cycles coming up, or just, you know, ascension symptom wise, how you're feeling, feel free to comment. I would love to answer. Love the feedback, and thank you very much. Please like and subscribe, and enjoy the Mercury retrograde.